Hello and welcome to Beth of Fresh Air. Beth here, Beth Martins, if we're just meeting for some reason. And there's a chunky start to the show. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to work on this, you guys. Oh, well, I don't know if you were hearing it, but the music, it was like it was doubled. So that was weird. I'm going to have to look into that. It didn't have quite so many beats in that song, let's say. That is a song from which one is that? Yeah, it's from my first album under the name Vijaya Living Knowledge. And you can go and catch that on Spotify or iTunes. And I have them for sale if you're not using those platforms, which I totally get. And so welcome to the show. It is November 14, 2025. It's my birthday in a couple of days. So that's kind of, I don't know, this year I'm deciding to do mostly nothing about it. The reason being that it can be a little bit of a, excuse to go and eat cake. I know a couple of years ago, was it a couple or more years ago, maybe 3 even, I'm like, okay, I'd been on a straight and narrow path with my diet and I've been like really good. And then I ate so much cake and then I nearly died, death by cake. Anyway, we are live on Facebook. Those videos disappear from Facebook now, but regardless, we're live there now. We're live on YouTube. And thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that very much. And hello to you. I won't take a chance at saying your name, but you could give us some phonetics. And hi, how are you? If you're new to the channel, definitely give it a sub. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you are here. Also live to X, Rumble, and Vigilante TV. All of these get uploaded as podcasts after the fact. So if you can't catch the whole thing and you want to go back, then it's always there for you. So welcome. I'm going to be talking today about on the theme of remember. We did have Remembrance Day here in Canada, November 11/11/11. And we... it's one of those strange holidays that always, honestly, I have to use a bad word to describe the effect of our statutory holidays on my consciousness. It's a little bit like time changes, the same kind of effect that it's I don't swear very much in my podcast, but it is a mind fuck, because why Remembrance Day is a sign of a very gory, awful situation in war. We can easily romanticize war and say how, they were fighting for our freedom and fighting for our freedom, that was a noble pursuit. But when you really see the engineering behind it and how no war should have been created in the first place, then it becomes a kind of very weird thing. And of course, you don't want to dismiss the brave, heroic acts of individuals that really did believe they were fighting for something, for a cause. And then, so, I'm not diminishing that in any way, but to have us be in this, to me, it's a form of trauma-based mind control. And this leads very much into the theme for today. Why do we have that as an instituted holiday, whatever that means, or, like nobody can work on that day, although that's out the window. Many stores still open, I think, on Remembrance Day, or is it illegal? I have no idea. I can't remember. So it's one of those that it's really hard to land in, and then the repetition, the year after year after year of causing us to remember the violence that our ancestors passed through, and are still. Some people would say that we're actually fifth generation war, that those wars never ended. They've just been morphing and changing as we go along. So why are we tasked to remember war? They will say that surface meaning is that so we don't repeat history. But here we see in reality, the history is continuously being repeated. So that's how trauma-based mind control works. When you keep exposing people to the atrocities of war, then that continues. I always thought how when they set off fireworks at our Canada Day or any other, Victoria Day, whatever, uh, holidays, those things come up in, and how they're they're preparing us, or they are keeping in our senses the sounds of war. That's what it always sounds like to me, that there's a war zone over there going off, and it's I mean, I imagine it sounds the same. I can't confirm that. And yeah, war continued with the lies of history and the poisoning of the food and the air. Exactly. Yeah, it's a different kind of war. I was recently visiting with my sister, who I went out with a little bit for my birthday. She gave me a beautiful gift. And I was able to start saying things to her that I hadn't talked about before. And one of the things was that, we're at war. And I was watching her take it in and metabolize it. And she's one of these people, you might recognize this in yourself, who has, or not, who has the ability to expand their awareness to include someone else's perspective. And this is a very profound form of, you could call it remembering, if I just keep with the theme that we're on today. That's it's a kind of vicarious remembering. So instead of just saying, "Oh, Beth, you sound like a lunatic and a conspiracy theorist," and all of that kind of thing, she expanded her awareness to include my reality. Not that she took on that reality, but and she's talking about the Enneagram, and it's a 9 space. Now, I'm not versed in the Enneagram. I love archetypes. I created my own system of typing. I'm going to get her to do my quiz and see where it comes up. But it's a gift, right? She's nearly the only one, or the only one in my family who could maintain a relationship with me. Everyone else went into such severe cognitive dissonance in our perspectives, couldn't include my perspective. I could, to some degree, include theirs. I understand, right? When someone yells at you and creates that trauma-based mind control message that you're going to die, then the tendency is that they want to preserve life, right? And this is a normal thing. This is a natural thing. This is a beautiful thing, a kind of an installation that we don't consciously run towards death. We unconsciously run towards death. But so anyway, that was kind of a beautiful thing. And I've been taking in the work of Joel Schaefer quite a bit lately. I bet you've seen his name go around. He's been interviewed by everybody, by Alex Zach and by Alpha Vedic and by Steve Falconer. It was by the time I got to the one with Steve Falconer that I started to really lean in. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about shamanic traditions. This was something that Joel has reminded me about, something that it's often the case where, for me, that going through life in a certain sort of way of seeing and a philosophy and a way of being and an idea about what the truth is, and then you come across new information, new knowledge, a new pathway, or something causes you to get off the old pathway and you go forward. The tendency is to think that you left that behind, that it's not being remembered for your present state of consciousness. And it's almost never the case. So personally, I am fascinated watching how life threads together. It's not a straight line. It is, people talk about the toroid. I talk about a spiral. That could be the same thing. I don't know. I haven't taken the time to really try to marry those paradigms, but it's not linear, right? We often know what it's not, and not what it is definitively, to be able to make claims. But the shamanic traditions were fascinating. In my university days, I studied anthropology. I did a directed studies in my honors degree, and got the gold medal in anthropology, not specifically for this work, but it was part of it, in the transformation of consciousness through shamanic initiation in particular. And shamanic initiation is a violence. that, if I'm coming now providing my editorialized version of what I see there, that it often involved sending like, say, the classic example is sending the young boy away from the care of the mother, throwing them into the forest and to see overnight to see if they would survive. And this was the test of this transition from boyhood into manhood, the depending less on the care and nurturance of the feminine and getting hurled into the world of the masculine, of survival, of resourcefulness, of that warrior spirit that will do whatever it takes to overcome and have a um, ability to not just be that mama's boy. Now, personally, I think it works the other way around. I only have one experience to draw, and I only had one child, so I can't say, again, making huge claims. And hello, Maya, by the way, nice to see you. And yeah, good to see everybody here, Michelle. Exactly. So in the in my experience, I'll just start with that. I had, as a young mom, I had the instinct to do everything possible to meet the needs of my son. That I wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I couldn't, being in the situation that I was, a single parent, that it's actually impossible to meet every single need. But I tried hard. I took it on like a marathon, and I gave my all. And in 2 years, I broke my back. It wasn't permanent. It came back online. But there was this, I just had this thing that if I gave everything to this child, that would be a gift. I just instinctually knew that. And I was around adults that would tell me, oh, put that baby down. You're turning them into a dependent. You're making them soft, and they're going to be a mama's boy. And you're ruining them by always holding them, always coddling them, always nursing them. I remember when my son, I taught my son the word nurse. This was maybe not as good an idea because he picked up on that word pretty good, and so he could ask me to nurse, and then he would do it sometimes in public, where it would be, oh, like, this isn't the exact right moment, and for sure we're coming, and then he'd go like, "Mama, nurse." And I'm like, okay, yeah, coming, we're coming. He'd be like, "Nurse," like this, saying it really loud. It was so cute. Total aside there. This is just some memories indulging myself in. And hello, Dux Y. Nice to see you. Welcome here. So the effect, the overall net result, now nearly 19 years after I spent those years really like just showing up for him, and I'm still that kind of mama. I will still show up for my son, and if he needs something, I'm going to do my best to provide that and be there for him. Now, what has been the net result is that he's grown incredibly independent, massively independent. And that started really early on, that because he had a couple of solid years, and the early years his needs were attended to. When he cried, I responded, and that's unlike the early childhood style of disattachment parenting, where they slept in their own room from infancy, even though the parents would be together in their own bedroom, and then somehow this infant had to find their own way. Like, I'm going to swear again, fuck off with that. That is a cruelty. That is a kind of trauma that's being enacted in the very earliest years, where it matters the most, where it leaves the deepest impressions, the deepest memories. That the memories won't be verbal and part of language, because it's pre-verbal. That makes them even more powerful when they have no words for the experiences of being abandoned. There can be a betrayal in that, abandonment and betrayal being two sides of the same coin in the child archetype, that they don't matter, they don't even exist, that they're, not lovable, that they have to somehow achieve love to in order to garner the attention that they need, and therefore the survival. They learn that survival is scarce, and it's something that you have to always work for, and you have to always be on top of, trying to, force the people to take care of you and notice you, right? That the child can't reason that, oh, I've been left in this space alone and they will come back. The child doesn't know that. The child doesn't have the faculties, the development, and the fully developed brain to remember, oh yeah, mom always comes in the morning, or whatever kind of thing. That they won't actually die, but they feel like they're going to die. And that's when most of the programming gets installed in our consciousness. It's not the end of it by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the toughest, most intense kind of programming, never mind birth, the birth traumas, that's a whole other level of exactly the same thing. And so this net result of having a very independent son has been amazing for me to witness. And personally, I think that having met his needs to a great extent left him with that memory that his needs could get met, right? If we have a memory that our needs can't get met, then we perpetuate that, we move that into the future, we manifest circumstances that are going to continue to show up in that pattern of scarcity, compared to the pattern of like, oh, hey, I exist, I matter, I'm important. These all sound like the high sides of programs, by the way, but like that, and that's not even the conclusion. I think that would be a bad claim on my part, that it just moves you up into the high side of the programming. That's not the case. I know that's a little esoteric, off the deep end. If you haven't done my work, you might not make sense of that at this point. But it's having your needs met actually makes you more secure. It makes you more independent. It makes you want to take care of yourself. That's what I noticed with my son, that because I always said, I will take care of you, and I will tell you what to do until I see you taking care of yourself and telling yourself what to do. And I don't even think I ever said that out loud to him, but it was a kind of unwritten code between us. And so he's systematically picking up on all of his needs now, including financially. He has a full-time job and he's being extremely responsible to it, right? I haven't had to call him in the morning and wake him up or help him get there, or he's taking care of all of his own meals. I could easily be showing up with all the lunches and stuff like that, but he's just taking care of himself. And I have seen children raised in the other style. And this is not for the sake of judging and calling out and making people feel bad and guilty and wrong. That's never, ever going to inspire anybody to grow. But nonetheless, as an experiment, watching kids that were, made to be independent, kids that were sent to the corner to, out. We talked about that in the episode on Belong, how they were pushed out of the tribe temporarily, that the parents know, but the little one doesn't know that. They don't have the memory. They don't have that ability. They have nothing to go on like we do. And then the net result there was a great deal of insecurity and a lot of, say, bedwetting, right? My son literally never once wet the bed, ever. And I'm not taking credit for this. He's his own soul, and God knows if he was raised differently, maybe he would have turned out the same anyway. I don't really have any way to say that, but I can see, that massive insecurity that when the needs aren't met and the programming gets installed to such a great extent, then they spend the whole life grasping at love, at survival, at, basic control over their life, which is the roots of our programming. And so I was talking about the shamanic traditions. I probably won't be able to thread this together super. Maybe I just wanted to brag about how independent my son is, and then meeting his needs, and Anyway, so I'm going to jump back into the shamanic traditions. I was inspired by Joel watching this, full circle, because I did start off in my spiritual pursuits trying to marry the academic and the spiritual together in this, university setting, trying to study these shamanic traditions. And the initiation, so this is how I came about it, that the initiation from the classic one, from the boy to the man, where they have some form of trauma enacted on the boy child. And don't even get me started about circumcision. I don't want to go there. That's like kind of anyway, we won't go there because it's just so sick when I think about it. I can't stomach it. But that, creates what we would have described to be the graduation into manhood, that this was like a gain of some kind. But in reality, my guess is that it is it's a cut, and it is a maybe something that has left our men in that more compromised kind of a state, and a numb state, and a desensitized state, and having been forced to go through so much pain of loss long before they could cope with it or had any ability to reason. And so I had some academic experiences around shamanism, like just learning about it and all of this, and it was fascinating. And then I went to after I graduated university, I went to Nepal, and I was living there, and there is a strong shamanic tradition in Nepalese shamans. So I found a shaman to study with for about 5 minutes. And so, we had a couple of sessions, and I learned some mantras to repeat and meditate on. And then I started having crazy nightmares. Like, it just set off all kinds of weird stuff in my system. And I, was already overseas, and it was a little bit, I was off in the wild for the first time ever in this strange country, living with families, not as a tourist, but like getting the full immersion kind of an experience. And I thought, you know what? No, let's just not go there. So I cut that pretty short, and left it behind, because in that very same trip, I was to end up in India, where it was, not the shamanic tradition. That was more the Vedic tradition of meditation and yoga and asceticism and mantra and philosophy, and all of the more inward turning kind of esoteric arts, not the messiness of the shamanic tradition. So this appealed to me more than this other kind of way of approaching spirituality. One of the key themes that I came across in studying the shamanic tradition was around, and this is why it came up in this episode of Remembering, is dismemberment. And so the basic premise being that any disease or any state of unrest or suffering in the body, heart, or mind was as a result of this dismembering. And so then the shamanic healing added up to the in some cases, it works both ways, that the dismemberment would be the tool or the technique used to dismantle and take apart the being. Again, back to shamanic initiation, you would die inside. You would, like, who am I? Am I going to live? Does anybody care about me? How am I going to make my way? How am I going to live through this night? And it causes this internal dismemberment and coming apart of, in that case, in that example, I was using the boy child. And so it fractures consciousness. It goes in, you could say, many directions. That might be just metaphorical as a way to describe it. But this dismemberment is what led to the ability, say the in particular shamanic initiation, being initiated into and as a shaman, then this dismemberment would be the foundation for that. And so there is, one philosophy that says that from death comes life. And so it's through the dismemberment, through coming apart and not knowing who you are and being all discombobulated and having no clear sense of reality or sureness in yourself, then this dismembering creates the template for something completely new to come together to remember, potentially in a conscious way rather than an unconscious way that might have created the state of disease and suffering. So dismemberment is a very common thing. You can go back and see images of people that were losing their limbs, and these images depicted this dismemberment. And one thing also from the therapeutic world, when I was studying with Gabor Mate in a workshop, he was talking about the way that people, when they're going through therapy, that have been through really severe traumas, severe losses, intense experiences, then they are, and if they are instructed to draw a picture of themselves, they often draw it where their hands and their feet are not connected to their body, giving more evidence in that pictorial way of this state of dismemberment, that it's just the first step, right? Like that's just the first step. And then our society doesn't have a way to help them remember, because in my experience, therapy really doesn't do that at all. So yeah, the shamanic traditions are very interesting. So Joel Schaefer, shout out to him, has reignited my interest in shamanism because he has come to a lot of the same truths that I have from a completely different perspective, one that I even thought I had rejected. And here he is coming to the same conclusions. So I'm super excited. It won't be until December 11, I believe, that I'm hosting him. I'm also going to be on his channel in December as well, on the 15th. So that'll be a fun, very fun exchange. I'm really looking forward to that. I really like seeing through his eyes. So let's see where we want to go with this. So just another aspect of memory. Maybe I will jump to the work of George Carrey. If you guys are familiar with the Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation book, that is a very profound work that I have read and spent a little time with. The thing that always impresses me about that, and what has to do with our memories, and yes, Joel has had some great interviews lately. Absolutely. He's on a roll like crazy. And so George Carrey in this book writes about the brain and the different parts of the brain that coincide or relate to different signs on the zodiac. And then, so just this little tidbit, and I always hold on to this. And if you've studied with me, you've probably heard me talk about it, but that the brain is named after the root cere, like cerebellum, cerebrum, or those two parts of the brain anyway. And the word cere means seed, and the meaning of seed is wax-like substance. And so wax, you might notice that if you take a hot knife and you press it into wax, it makes an impression the shape of the knife. And so that just gave me, that opened up this huge window of revelation into the nature of the brain and the nature of our memories, which I find fascinating, right? To just notice how when somebody says something to me, there can be times where I'm not paying enough attention to have heard all of their words. But nonetheless, their words made an impression in my seed and wax-like substance brain, and I can still access it. I can go back to the record, and God knows whether the record, how accurate the record is, because it's obviously going through filters, but it will still be there. Now, just for a little bit of time, I play this game with codes every time an app tells me to get a code so that I can enter my own app, even though I just used the password. And then I'll glance at the number enough to make an impression in my brain, and then I'll go back and I'll do the number, and it'll still be there. It'll be there for like, seconds, not usually even a minute. If I didn't write that number down for a minute, then I wouldn't be able to remember it. But it's there in the meantime. So some of our memories end up really enduring. And which memories end up enduring? Can you guys guess which ones we remember the best or the most intensely? Is it the good memories or the bad memories? Doesn't mean we don't remember the good, but if you're guessing it's the bad memories, yes, those are the ones that are more easily remembered. So I was going to get you guys to just even play along with me and, think about your first 5 years of life. Some people don't have a lot of memory from that time, but some people do. Yeah, exactly, Michelle. The bad memories really stick out. Exactly. And if you consider the first 5 years of your life, what are yep, you got it, Maya. What are the memories that stick out for you? Are there a handful of memories? Were they good ones? So I will go first, and how it made you feel. Exactly, Maya. That's it. You could say that is now. Is it part of the memory, or is it an add-on to the memory? Is it a link to the memory, the way that emotions, I'm going to talk about this kind of, I call it sausage link to the memory. And one memory often begets another memory, and they link up, and they have this, at the level of your emotions, a lot of content in these sausage links, for lack of a better metaphor. And so, yeah, these bad memories really stick out for us. And what I've noticed is that these traumas, when I think about one of my earliest childhood memories, I might have been, I don't know, I might have been 2 or something like that. And our family used to go to a place called Opapaskow. Oh, there's another memory. They're going to start flooding in for you and for me. So yeah, considering for yourself, what comes to the surface? Is there a top 3 or 5 memories from those earliest days of yours? And so yeah, we used to camp at a place called Opapaskow. I believe it's in Alberta or something like that. Should look it up and go there. And my first memory, maybe at the age of 2, we were on the beach, and all of a sudden my mom grabs me, picks me up, and starts running for the lake. And I'm like going, what is going on here? This is like, what's happening to me? I'm just being against my will. I'm being picked up and running. And then I get dunked in the cold water. Well, it turned out I had, made a mess in my pants. And then so my mom treated it like an emergency. I wouldn't want to be the rest of the people on the beach because she ran for the lake to give me a wash. But and I was so mad at her on the way back out of the water. She had to fireman carry me, over the shoulder kind of thing. And I was pounding and kicking and beating at her. And I was so angry about what she had done to me. And that just really stayed in my consciousness, and did it stay in my consciousness because of that really heightened emotion, that injury to my pride, to my free will. And so that was such a big deal. And this is one of the things that I always try to do also with the little ones, is to never diminish their experience, because that was always the way they did it to us. That like, oh, what are you crying about? Or worse, I will give you something to cry about. Because from their adult rational perspective with a fully developed brain, they knew nothing really wrong was happening to me. They weren't abusing me. They weren't trying to kill me. They're actually trying to help me. But there was no empathy of any kind for this, what that experience just created in my system. I was taught to, like, shut up and suck it up, and that, there's nothing wrong, kind of thing. Yeah, some really positive memories with your father at 4 to 6. Mike is saying, exploring and collecting rocks that you would organize and name later. That's nice. So you have a nice memory. That's awesome. I'm sure I have those too. And yeah, that's beautiful. Michelle, you said having to use an outhouse with no indoor bathroom when you were too terrifying. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, hilarious in retrospect. That's funny. But from that 2-year-old place, terror is real, right? My sister had a fear of, I believe it was snakes, and she was 6 years younger than me, so I have a really good memory of this. That I believe it was an earthworm managed to make its way into the house because my parents were avid gardeners, so was my grandma. And so this earthworm, darn it, what did they do? They flushed it down the toilet. Why? I don't know. You should just throw the critter outside, but they flushed it down the toilet. Maybe it was dead or something. And then from that moment on, my younger sister decided she was not ever going to use that toilet again. It was over for her. If there's snakes in that toilet, she ain't putting her butt there, kind of thing. And yeah, so yeah, that stuff is real. It's. I really encourage people to have empathy and not laugh at children, at their terrors, at their misunderstandings, at their, thinking that a worm is a snake kind of thing, to have empathy for that, and just try to remember what was it like when you couldn't reason, when you couldn't make logic out of any situation. It gives you a lot more compassion for those little guys. So yeah, that was one of the things I went out of my way to do with my son, was never to like, if he got hurt, it would be, okay, you're hurt. To have empathy, to go, yeah, okay, oh, Liam's suffering, darn, rather than go, you're okay, stop crying, you're okay. Here, let me kiss it away, let me hug it away, let me spank him. No, Elliot James, no. But that's more or less how people were raised on the whole. And what's the net result? You can see is looking around. So that's interesting, Elliot. Thanks for chiming in that pain is necessary for growth. It is actually true. I totally agree with that. But is there pain that can be avoided? And is there pain that can't be avoided? Is there necessary pain that is just a matter of growth, that is just a matter of expansion, right? When we dismember to a certain kind of reality in order to step into a new reality, it's painful. That's not fun. That's not a good time. But it is necessary in order to get to that next place. But to actively create painful situations for children as somehow aiding their growth, to me, that's where it's really off. And it's not necessary by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, it can seem like that because that's how we're all raised, right? So yeah, I always look at the difference between the pain of injury and the pain of growth. Those are both pains and both intense. But the pain of injury is not necessary if that injury could have been avoided. The pain of growth, you don't want to avoid that. That's our whole purpose to be here, is to learn and to grow. And yeah, so pain is, you could say, Elliot James, you could say that pain it is an ingredient. We have it. We live in a death cult. We're, born and raised into death cults that are full of unnecessary pain. But I have a suspicion that we would find other reasons to grow personally. Yeah, it's the same. Hi, Annie D. Nice to see you. It's the same no pain or no gain kind of a situation. And yeah, that insidious stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And what's the net result of that? What does the child do with that information? You guys know? Right? Do they grow? Or is that a point of becoming stuck? To me, that's a point of getting stuck. I know you guys can't answer fast enough on the chat. But right. Michelle, you got it, right? That is exactly the net result of saying shut up or I'll give you something to cry about, is that what do is they suppress their pain. That's when you get the lump in your throat. Emotion wants to come to express the pain, which is a very healthy part, the expression of the pain, allowing yourself to cry, to express, to begin to discharge the emotional energy. So if you're not allowed to discharge, you've been injured and you're not allowed to express and discharge that emotional energy, then you stuff it. You push it down into your body, your heart, your mind. It becomes part of the memory of that experience. Children who are more or less, in my limited experience, who are allowed to really fully go through their experiences, they're allowed to express. And from what I saw is that they really flow through. They can flow through their experiences with much less residue, much less energetic hangover from those kind of experiences. And you can see it. A toddler will bump up against something, doesn't get what they want, and they go into a rage or they cry, and they, when nobody answers their cries, they get mad and go up the scale. But yeah, that whole thing, if it's not allowed, it's just what Michelle's saying, it leads to dissociation and numbing out, right? And so that's back to that shamanic initiation of the boy into the man. I think that's happened to a great extent, where men are much less able to access their inner experience, and that makes it harder for them to heal from the past injuries. So yeah, that necessary pain, it's just that pain is, and we are inner alchemists. That's part of our nature that we're patterned with. And so we do have the capacity to turn every pain into some kind of awakening. That's entirely the work that I do, helping people to deprogram, is to take the charge of the memory and to alchemize it into, really, and that's a misnomer, into something, as if lead into gold, but it's not really like that. It's just taking that stuck energy that gets frozen in time through the trauma, through the suppression, especially of the expression of that trauma. And that's what creates that, from, it could be a lifelong pattern from then on. And so yeah, pain is going to happen, but we don't need to create anybody's pain. That seems to come with life, right? It's, life is fully installed with all kinds of opportunities for pain, and you don't. I never needed to add any extra to my son's life in order to get him to where he is right now. Anyway, hello, sane lady. Nice to see you. No worries about being late. The beginning of the stream is always there, and but I'm glad you made it. That's awesome. So yeah, the charge of the memory is fascinating, because what I notice is that when you go and discharge a memory, the memory does not disappear. The impression is still there, which is fascinating. And sometimes I'll be, say, especially going to sleep and doing some release work and having some memories kind of swim in my head. Could be from the day, could be from many years ago. It's very interesting how memories come forward into consciousness, and how does that actually occur. Sometimes there's no stimulus of any kind. Other times it's like, oh, this happened, my sister said this, and then I remembered that. So, it can be that more linear association, but they can also just come out of nowhere in a way that, might be actually serving us as the memories come up. This is interesting just to remind myself of. So one of my trainers in the release work would say that your imagination and your thoughts are always serving you what's next on the menu that's going to lead to the deprogramming work and result in freedom. So sometimes people have memories that they can't suppress. Maybe they could suppress them for a long time, but they can't anymore. They're coming forward. For example, I have worked with people who have been through SRA, satanic ritual abuse. And from what I understand, the vast majority of the people that end up going through that experience, it's so intensely um, traumatic that they actually have to split. They have to completely dissociate from the memory. They have to put the memory off into some dark place in the consciousness where there's no light on it. There's no, it's just not there. It's as if it didn't happen to them, but it did. And the impression is still there. So they might spend, a decade and 2 decades and even 3 decades making sure that that memory isn't known. But there might come a point in their spiritual evolution, if you want to call it that, their move towards freedom, where those memories start flooding back. And that's exactly what I've noticed. The one person I worked with in particular who went through the most intense, horrendous experiences I will never repeat, and for privacy reasons, but also not to re-traumatize or not to traumatize anybody or not to even traumatize myself again, because it is vicariously traumatizing. Those memories, they couldn't push down anymore. And the reason for that, in my estimate, is because it takes such enormous amounts of energy to suppress. You don't know you're doing it, but you're actively doing it, using your life force that is meant for, life to push and suppress and hold down. And then it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of might. That energy otherwise might be something that you could use to heal and grow and learn and connect and all of the good things in life. But they need it to push down on the consciousness. So when you can't do that anymore, you get exhausted or your body gets sick, or you don't have defenses in the way that you maybe normally would have if circumstances aren't just business as usual in your life. Then those memories can flood back. They don't go away, and they come with all of the charge. They come with all of the feelings, the emotions, and ultimately the programs that root those feelings in place. And it's pretty tragic because the amount of work that it takes to heal from those experiences is really off the charts. I bow down to anybody that even embarks upon that. And I'm missing a few things in the chat here. Hello, Nivod75. Nice to see you. You're a real Beth of fresh air. It's so fun for me when people play this podcast title back to me now. It's really fun. Sane Lady said the videos are great. You're enjoying them. Glad to catch it live. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're catching the remembers. Sorry, reading the other message. The recordings. And Nivad said, remember to stay calm and take deep breaths. There you go. We could play with that for a long time. Play on words. NED said, lion's mane give you some crazy old memories out of the blue. You knew it was starting to work. Interesting. Yeah, lion's mane. I'm not super familiar with that. Is it a little bit like motherwort that causes you to dream, have weird dreams? I learned that motherwort causes that because it's an irritant, that it's like, it's stirring shit up in your system. Might be the same with lion's mane. And life can stir up your shit pretty good. There's no end to, you look out, you look in, you have a conversation, do anything in life, try for something, you're inevitably going to stir that shit up. And it needs to be stirred up. It needs to come to the surface. The memories need to come in a way. But there's also the wisdom of that you don't need to pick through all your garbage before you throw it out. There's a certain wisdom in that. Nivad said their nervous system and neural networks quarantine until it can be released. Exactly. It's so intense. Yeah. Quarantine is a good a good word for that, like literally quartering off. Yeah, excellent. And you believe lion's mane helps you regrow or reconnect brain nerves and pathways, right? I have become systematically suspicious of every single herb, but I haven't looked into that one at all, and not every one is a bad and wrong one. I just don't take it for granted now that because it's an herb or because it's found in nature that it's good for you. Quick aside, I was hosting Mark Archer in the House of Free Will for a part 2 snippet on Cain and Abel today. So we're talking about life and death and how, so he's reading the Bible from such a different perspective. It's really interesting. And his take is that the Bible was actually written by Lucifer. We're taught it's the other way around, like God wrote the Bible, right? So that's total blasphemy to a lot of people. And so we're getting to see this world through Lucifer's eyes, whose creation is the reflection of death. That every single thing on earth dies, goes through this, life cycle, is born, lives for a time, passes out of existence, but that the spirit never dies, that the whole, whether it's the divine or it's Lucifer, they're both eternal because they're from an eternal source, the divine being the source or something like that. God only knows. Oh, it's a mushroom, Nevat? Okay, interesting. Yeah, mushrooms. Fascinating. And so the let's see, where was I headed with that, with the Cain and Abel? And oh darn, it slipped out of my mind. What were we talking about? Going back to, I'm gonna have to open those notes with Cain and Abel. It ends up sending me in a real I don't know, just in circles. It gets teleological when you really start to get down to the heart and soul of it. So yeah, I'd just be repeating a bunch of stuff, but yeah, the illusion of death and the violation of free will and life and death. Michelle, thank you. And yeah, born into this death cult, and it was about the animals. So it was the plants that were created first. Here we go. I found it. And the Bible written by Lucifer. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. That the plants were created first. And so this is a little tongue in cheek, but possible that we are here for the plants, not the other way around. People think that these plants were all created for us, and that pomegranate really wants me to eat it, even if it's the snake telling me to do it. And are we just doing the bidding of the plants that were the first the first creation here? Also very interesting. This is total aside. I'm really off topic now, but that Cain was the agrarian, growing the land in a more kind of horticulture, agriculture kind of style, and Abel was the animal husbandry guy and raised animals. And maybe that was included with hunting and more what we call primitive kind of societies, that the hunters and the gatherers. And so the Bible says to eat plants. Well, if Lucifer wrote the Bible, then that kind of makes sense, because most of the plants are poisonous. And the healthier people tend to, now this is purely my experience and my study and my own practical experiment of the last years, but the more that I focus on animal protein, muscle meat in particular, with some plant material, not a huge amount, but some, for the sake of soluble fiber, then I'm the healthiest that I have ever been. This is a very favorable kind of liver detoxifying lifestyle and diet, where the pure vegetarians tend to end up with a lot of problems in their liver. And I know the vegetarians are going to get up in arms and they're going to freak out and not like that, but it's true. And what happens to you emotionally and energetically when your liver gets overloaded is that you get upset, you get angry, you get murderous, right? That's what Cain got, and he killed Abel. He might have eaten Abel. This, like, that Cain and the Abel and the cannibal, because there was only the blood crying out from the earth. That the flesh was not even there in the picture, in the scene, at least as Lucifer wrote about it. So anyway, that's where I went with all of that stuff. It didn't go over that well with Mark, but that's me just trying to make sense of it and prove possibly why our food is more poison than it is nutrients when it comes to the plant world and the herb world and everything like that. So I know it's very unpopular. I've made myself stupidly unpopular because of all of that. And the Bible written by Lucifer. That's fascinating. That's a kind of brand new idea for me, and it changes the picture. I really had to pull away from trying to make sense of it because it was causing me just undue confusion and suffering, and it wasn't nothing really good was going on there. But yeah, so the memories and our, for example, our ability to hold a grudge is like, wow, intense, that you can have something bad happen to you a long time ago and you still dislike that person, you still hate that person, you still feel like they did you wrong, and there maybe needs to be some kind of compensatory action for that. And that might be true, actually. So that's not to put down the person that would necessarily hold that grudge, but the old adage is that who is that hurting? You're taking poison and expecting someone else to die, right? So if every day of your life you're mad at your mom for picking you up and washing your butt in the lake, then who is that hurting? It's not her. She's not even here anymore. That's not going to be any payback to her. Not that I ever necessarily want to do that. But, if I hold on to that anger, that continues to be poison in my system. And so our memories get as if served to us on a platter, and we don't know when they're going to come. And you don't necessarily even need to know why they came, because that's where a lot of people get stuck. Like, why would I be thinking about this now? Why would I be remembering this now? Why would that come up for me now? It doesn't really matter. The fact is that it came up, and in the coming up, that's when it could be dealt with. It could be met. That's from the work of Gangaji, who I don't totally necessarily follow because she's all jabbed up and recommended the jabs and everything. It doesn't look good, but I love her instruction to meet the experience, to meet the memory, to meet the feelings that are surrounding the memory. And then a level deeper is to meet the programs that hold all of that charge in place. And you can treat it that your consciousness is serving you, not torturing you, not giving you things to feel bad about only, but so that you could heal, so that you could be free. So yeah, that was the point of all of that. And when we release a charged memory, it turns into just a memory. You can still go back and remember what was the most painful thing to you, the thing that would not only injured you from the past, but continues to injure you over and over and over and over again, as if it continues to injure you. But really, it's our unconscious choice. We are injuring ourselves or consenting to this re-injury. And then when it's completely discharged and all of the programs are gone, you're still going to have the memory, but it's not going to be a source of losing energy and pain, which is fascinating. I mean, what's up with that? The ability to remember is, of course, I think, a very big part of our evolution. It's not exclusive to human beings that we have memory, although we can't tell the extent of it with animals. I remember bringing one of my cats that came from a litter where the parents were still, or the mom was still in the neighborhood. And so we brought our little kitties for a sleepover when we were going away. Well, the mom did not remember the kittens, or it was that she didn't want to see them. She didn't have any like love and affection for them. She didn't suffer when they were gone, kind of thing. It was so funny because you'd think like, oh, my baby's back, and oh, I love you, and where have you been? Lick, lick, lick. And it was just like, who are you? Get away, brat. Or are you gonna eat my food or something like that? And she just had no affection for her babies. So what's that? Like a totally different kind of thing. Human would be hard pressed. They would have to suppress the crap out of their instincts in order to not welcome and want to be with that baby. But yeah, it's a totally different kind of a function going on with our memories and animals. So they do remember. Like if you abuse an animal, they remember that. How sad is that, right? They can end up being very much estranged and unsocial and hard to interact with. And being loving and kind to an animal, if they have such a strong memory of having abused, then they're not going to be able to receive that. It's really tragic. And I don't know that they can necessarily heal from it, although maybe they can. I did have my mom's cat, God knows what she went through to become so crazy. It's probably just the genetic engineering of her line, because she was a Persian Siamese, like a really beautiful, amazing looking animal. She was barely there. It was all fur, just like this. And when I first got her, her nature had been, and I knew her because she was my mom's cat, was all just like, oh, scary humans, don't come near me. I'm definitely never going to sit on your lap. And, I might acquiesce to let you touch me a little bit here and there, but like, oh, you're a danger kind of thing. And over the course of the months, I started somewhat forcing her, like, okay, pick her up, put her on my lap. And when she wanted to go, she would go. But there came a time where she actually wanted to sit on my lap. So there was some kind of healing took place in that part of her nature. I think animals can come along, but the fact remains, I think humans have the greatest capacity for healing of any species of any kind. And that's why you don't imbue animals with human qualities. They are not human. There's something distinctly different. Exactly. If you can't tell the difference between a cow and a human, then then we won't have this conversation at all. Yeah. Some vegetarians use that as an argument to not eat meat, that if you can't tell the difference, because, oh, well, animal or, plants die when we eat them too. And then someone would say, if you can't tell the difference between a cow and a cauliflower, then we don't have anything to talk about. But that's a whole other conversation. So yeah, interesting also how, say, institutionally, memorization has become the cornerstone of education. I recently had somebody that wants to sign up for one of my courses, and they said, "Oh yeah, I have to wait until my memory gets better." And that's like, I mean, I totally respect everybody's timing. There's no criticism whatsoever, but that this is the conditioning that we have that learning equals memorization, and that we read words in a book, and we add that to our memory. Sometimes you have to force that stuff in your memory. There might be subjects you've noticed, and you can let me know in the chat if there's subjects that you learn or you like get exposed to, you read about, you hear about, you whatever, and that information just goes in and it's just there, right? That's how personally I've been with the work in archetypes and the inner consciousness, all of this kind of stuff. To me, I can learn something one time and it goes right inside my consciousness. It just does. Like I don't have to read it again. I don't have to sit and think like, what was that? And remember that. There's certain stuff that I can just hear once and blam, it's mine. And then there can be other subjects. For example, the law. It's like, it doesn't, honestly, I can read something, law and finances, same kind of subject for me. I could read something several times. I could hear someone say it many times. I could take the same class like 3 times in a row. I'm about to embark on that with Brennan Sterling, and I can just barely grasp, like just barely pull out a word. I know I could give it more time and energy, and I could give it more effort and like treat it like my full-time work every day. And I could do that. I know I do have the ability to memorize and take in information. But if it's, what is it, a matter of interest or purpose, that we don't have certain inclinations, and therefore the porosity, it's funny how that word keeps coming to my mind these days, that we're not porous to that information. So somebody the other day, I just totally said something like, they said, oh, the Constitution is the law, and if any law supersedes the Constitution, then it's not right. And then I had this memory that, but the law, the law has to be enacted. But I was thinking of something else. I did pick up one fact, but I mangled it, and I was totally wrong. Like, and they were right. The Constitution is actually law, and any law that comes after it cannot supersede it, even though that happens anyway, right? But yeah, all the jingles, the way that we've used music to embed that. I have a friend who wrote a song on all of the, I believe it was the bones of the body, like every single bone in the body. She had a song that encapsulated nearly every part of the anatomy. I can't remember if it was bones or whatever. And it was kind of miraculous because she had the whole thing down. And it becomes much easier when you attach it to music. And what's that? Where the memory is much more accessible when it's got some rhythm and a melody and maybe a flow to tie it all together. So yeah, that's a pretty fun way to go. And then yeah, so the focus on memorization as learning has turned us all into, like, what has that worked for us? Has it made us wise and knowledgeable and able to not repeat mistakes from the past? Um, right? Has it done that? Has it made us so great? Has it made the average person that comes out of the school system, whether that's grade 12 or university or master's and PhD programs, has that made for a bunch of wise people, even though they have a lot of facts? Or they may not even have those facts. Think about it. I got the gold medal in my degree in university. It's a big nope. Exactly. I got the gold medal, so I'm bragging. I was at the top of my class in anthropology, and I might have enough words to take up the space of, like, say one hand from that degree, that whole entire degree in the field of anthropology. There's one word that sticks out, Australopithecus. Why did I retain that word? I don't know. Why is it even so top of mind for me if I started naming the, so-called evolution of humanity, which complicates things greatly, because why are you going to remember things that are probably not even true, that it's manufactured history, although this isn't history because it wasn't the written word. That's like prehistory, paleontology kind of stuff. And so, like, I got the gold medal, but I don't remember anything, nothing. Why? Right? Why? Because that knowledge is not actually of use. There were some things in my degree that I went forward and used and have come full circle, like the whole shamanic initiation that I'm thinking about more these days. And it's kind of threading into my work a little bit. But so yeah, we don't really learn through memorization, just through creating new grooves in our memory. And why do some memories persist? And why do some memories fade? Why is that? Why would I remember Australopithecus? Why would I remember that? What's the point of it, that it's just so top of mind? And so these are the questions, and I don't necessarily have answers. Utilitarianism is a fun one. Yeah. Yeah, words are fun. They have certain rhythms, and they are fun to play with. So very good. What else do I have here? Yeah. Then I was going to talk a little bit about the repetition of mantra, which is kind of like memory on steroids, where you just repeat. You take a little phrase or a verse and you say it or you sing it over and 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 over. And you do it again the next day and you do the same thing over and over and over. And it can be a very deep study. Say, choosing your phrase carefully, of course. You don't want the mantras that have a negative meaning and vibration to them. But I found personally, I abandoned mantra as a practice because having done mantra for the better part of 10 years and going to India and picking up all the Sanskrit verses and everything like that, the practice led me ultimately. I always look at this. What's the net result? What was created in the end was I was sick with a stage 4 lymphoma. Well, all my mantra didn't spare me from getting so incredibly out of alignment in my life and getting so sick and needing to move to emergency measures for 3 years. So the repetition became something that worked against me. I had a roommate when I was back in my post corporate. I think it was when I was maybe post treatments and surviving that second round. And so I had a roommate I was living with. She was very into mantra. She was part of a cult. It was the Japanese version of what do they call it? Psycho Gone or something. Anyway, I can't remember. And I did learn that it's definitely a cult after, which made a lot of sense having observed my roommate. And so she would sit and repeat these mantras over and over and over. And then she got sick and died, like really sick. And her people in the cult would say that, oh, don't see a doctor, which I mean, I might have said the same thing if she was asking my advice, which she didn't. But they would just say, like, just do your mantra, just do your practice, do your practice, do your practice. It will take care of everything. And then she died. I was like, that advice didn't work very well. So, what happens to you when you're in that robotic repetition of a mantra? What happens to you? What takes place that she could get so sick and die and not intervene? It's amazing nobody came along and sued the cult, like her father or her brother or something like that. It was a really tragic death, or who knows? I mean, that might have been her time, no matter what. But this is what I saw, that mantra was making her numb. And you can see that's exactly what people who've been educated end up, just like robots and automatons on repeat, saying the same thing, with the inability to take in any new information or be porous to any new information. Like I was talking about my sister, who is miraculously able to do that on my behalf. And so, yeah, the repetition of the mantra just creates this kind of numbness in you. For example, you can use a very, any kind of a thing. Give yourself a stimulation of some kind, like, right, just run a pen on your hand and keep doing that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you do that for half an hour or an hour or 2 hours, what's going to happen to the skin that you're rubbing back and forth, right? You guys know this. Yeah, the mantra becomes programming to the individual. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be very much attached with programming. I didn't look at it exactly that way, but I think I see what you're saying there. That the programming basically ends up being what comes to the surface and what we operate out of. Say, with that example with my roommate, if she wasn't doing the mantra, it's possible she could have had a thought like, oh, I need some help of some kind. I need to like find a solution to this problem that I'm having. Whether she may or may not have, it turned into a very advanced cancer. Who knows? We have no way to know. But yeah, it's possible that say one way that I might say it is that they use the mantra as a way to suppress the programming. So not necessarily that the mantra becomes the programming, but it comes now. I could say it your ways that like they do mantra because of the programming, and that helps them to not feel the pain of the programming, because programming is the most painful thing that you could ever experience, right? It's threatening your core needs for love, control, survival, and connection. And when you discover a program and you allow yourself to meet it and to feel it, that's more pain than anybody signs up for right there, right? Like that, it's right there available to us if we have decided to allow ourselves to go there and to feel that in the name of what? Freedom. Not just because pain makes you grow. It's not like that. You have to still do something with that. You have to release it. You have to release the programming that is vibrating with that pain. So yeah, the mantra is a way to just further suppress. Because if we keep our mind busy back and forth doing the same repetitive thing over and over again, then there's no room for a memory to come up. There's no room for a program to come to your awareness and to feel all that pain. But this is the thing that people are trying to avoid, is the space, the silence, the quiet, the being alone can feel like a death of kinds, because it's just you and your thoughts. What do people do when they're alone for 10 seconds? Is I caught myself wanting to do it when I had dinner with my sister. She went off to the restroom, and it's like, oh, I want to grab my phone and see if there's any notifications, right? And it's just like, no, I'm going to just sit here. Just going to sit here. I'm not even going to look at the menu. Not going to busy myself. I'm just going to sit here and see what happens. And this is an ongoing training for me to just be able to go into that space. So it doesn't mean, I still have CDs. I've got 4 recordings. They all have mantras on them. Some of them extended. I was listening a little bit last night, and I'm going, oh my goodness, she could sing like forever, the same song and the same thing, the same melody and the same words. And it is good in regulating your nervous system and regulating your breath. The mantra, using your voice, is very good. It's a beautiful vibration overall for the body. It's very calming and very nice, but it has this potential. And what does it maybe come down to is your motive. What's your motive? Is it to numb out, or is it to go more deeply into your experience so that you could release and be free? So yeah, it's all very complex. And yeah, so I did a lot of mantra. I don't do mantra as a practice anymore. I'll still sing along to my own songs because they're fun and they're pretty. I like them. But not so much as a spiritual practice. To me now it's all about the release work. Taking away what's not you, and letting what's not you go. This was interesting around memories, and I can't remember where I heard this the first time, but I've been repeating it ever since, so I can't give credit to it. But someone said that there's 2 deaths. The first death is when your body passes and you go in the grave. The second death is the last time that somebody says your name, right? Which is so interesting. Then you start to think about, like, who is going to remember me and say my name when I'm gone? And sometimes I'll just be sitting there in the quiet, and I'll say my mom's name or my dad's name or my grandma's name. I'll just say it out loud to keep their memory alive, right? And does that actually affect them or not? I don't know if there's any truth inside that. I don't know, but that's kind of fascinating that we all have to face that at some point that there's going to come the time where you are no longer in anyone's memory. And some of us will fight to leave a book behind, or some kind of legacy or project that's in line with the king archetype, that sees beyond their own lifetime and the benefit of maybe potential future generations to come. But we don't know. There's no guarantee of the media coming through. You write a book and this will dissolve and evaporate eventually, right? It won't even be a piece of paper anymore. And who knows about electronic? We think these things live forever, but they can be gone instantaneously also. So it's kind of fascinating. People used to hold the stories and the tales in their memories, and then pass them on religiously, and they would be obligated to continue passing on those stories, and that's how the oral tradition was able to live and thrive. Let's see. Michelle said, it's a song that never ends. It just goes on and on, my friends. Some people start singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because. Yeah. Yeah, I'm amazed that when I listen to people's music, I have to do it judiciously, because I will get their music in my head and it will make an impression, and it will be there incessantly. So every spare moment, every quiet moment where I'm not using my mind, I will be hearing that, and then I have to just totally like not listen to that for a really long time. There's one album I'll listen to every year. I love it, and I know all the words to it, and I like to dance and sing, and it's Austin French, if you're familiar with him. He's got some really cool. I just love his voice. I love his energy, and it's positive, and the whole world of not positive. But if I listen to it more than once a year, it's in there, and like I'm always having this backdrop. So I would rather have my own music as a backdrop. If I have anything stuck in my head, I'd rather have something that I chose stuck in my head, like a brainworm, I call it. Annie D says she loves storytelling, but craves real life stories, not fictional ones, usually just people talking. Yeah. Yeah, that's what's so compelling about connecting with people and hearing their stories, that often people think their story really has no value or no real meaning. That just means that they haven't dug the meaning out of it and threaded their life together in a way that's meaningful. So the stories are um, actually a coherent whole. They are. This is something that I help people with when it comes to sacred purpose work, is looking back in your life and seeing how did everything thread together, and how do you have a story from that has this deeper meaning about maybe the lessons that it's taught you, the truths that it's brought forward in your life, and all of the wisdom of living. So yeah, the stories of people are incredibly compelling, even if they're just normal living. There's something beautiful, and I think the underlying reason for that is that we are creatures of the divine, and the divine, in some ways, I think is really living through us in a strange way, living through our experiences. Every time I let myself say be joyful and dance and sing and just express and take a little bit of a break, I can feel this divine enjoyment that God can know itself through me, and not just through the enjoyment, of course. That includes all, from the high, the low, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. And then so when we get to see through other people's eyes, it's exciting, because I only have this perspective. I only know this being and this body and this life and these memories. So when somebody shares and imparts and tells a story of their real life, then that's compelling to me, because I don't have that perspective. I don't get to see through those eyes. That's why I love interviewing people, because I get to see through their eyes, even if I don't necessarily totally agree with them, which is often the case. I might not interview anybody if I had to totally agree with them. But yeah, storytelling, it is really, really compelling. I love that. I hosted in part a women's lecture series based on that exact premise, that we love to hear other people's stories. And it doesn't matter, again, that it's some heroic tale. Sometimes people hear my story and then it makes them feel like they're diminished in their story. But that's just really not the case at all. Every story is worth telling, especially if you garner something out of it, like you let wisdom come from it. The Ring of Truth. Sounds good. Nice. You should write a story about your life called The Ring of Truth. And authentic experience. Yeah, to me, this is like the ultimate thing that we can get. We can have our own and express our own authentic experience. And potentially we could get the experience of other people vicariously that way, and live more than one lifetime, because other people are brave to share. I just noticed a button on my StreamYard that says show comments on stage. There they are. Wow. I really have to play with StreamYard when I'm not live streaming, because there's more features than used to be. And let's see, there's all kinds of other things. If you bear with me, let me see what happens when this. Oh, that's for the chat. I get it. Can make it big for those people who are challenged with seeing. That would be me. So that's kind of fun. And what happens when I do this? Nothing. Okay, it stays the same. Good to know. And this could be wide and take over the screen a little bit. And it could be tall. Tall is interesting. And then regular. Good. Now I know. All right. Let's see. I was also going to talk a little bit about what I call loops and stations. This is a subject that I teach my coaches to watch out for, but we should all be aware of this. And it's a kind of detective work, that any inner work of freedom is going to be detective work. Any work that's truly for your health is going to be detective work. And hello, Paul. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. Just talking about being a detective. And that's like the ultimate task that we have here on this earth, of discovering, in this case, in my subject, the unconscious, what can be loops and stations, and how, you can be aware of a memory. Oh, this memory keeps coming up. Oh, it just keeps coming up. And so you don't investigate it. You don't necessarily, what are all my feelings around that memory? What are all the programs that root those feelings in place? You don't necessarily do that. And then you just like, oh yeah, that memory. And you go on with your day and your normal life. And you just go on. But if you start doing the detective work and you go like, oh, fascinating, that memory comes up at the same time every year. There's some kind of, have you noticed that, by the way, that there's certain, of course, cycles. I'm about to have my astrology read by Topher for my birthday, so that's going to be really fun next week. And that's all about the cycles. And I think I'm about to go through a major Saturn return new event in the next, I think it was 2027, April 2027. That's a definite, remembering of your past, and your like major things tend to happen. My first Saturn return was when I got really sick with cancer, and my life fell apart, and everything was completely over for the moment. Could have been over forever. And so once you start going really deep into these things, you do notice certain kind of patterns and loopings and ways that you station and remain, rather than in moving maybe up the scale of emotion or archetypes, which is not necessarily the goal. But this movement is definitely part of the goal. Where there's movement, there's life. And these loops and stations, they keep us moving, but they do not keep us growing, I think, is the main point. So there's movement in the loops and those stations of the loops. And so I'll use an example of, say, there's something that I would have wanted, maybe an opportunity of some kind, or somebody to like me or love me, and I wanted that. And then so I would, grasp at that and try to get that, however, engineer that, or God forbid, manipulate to get that. which I don't know what he does on purpose. Of course, that would only be unconscious. And then say there came a point where I got rejected, or I just couldn't get that thing, or I failed, or things didn't work out like I hoped they did, or the person didn't cooperate, and they didn't want to be part of my imagination or part of my creation that I was trying to make. And then so I would, the next thing from this, like trying to grasp, when I had that full stop, then I would go like, oh well, I don't care about them. I just like, oh, I didn't really care about them. I didn't really care about that. And I might even project onto them that they're stupid or they're bad and wrong, or some kind of maybe compensating myself for feeling bad. I don't have to feel bad and rejected as long as I feel bad towards them, and I make it like I judge them. And so you can see how there's like this grasping, and then there's the avoidance of rejection being another part of the loop, and then the moving over towards like, you're bad and wrong. I never liked you anyway, or like, I must be above you. That's why you rejected me, because I'm so much better than you, stuff like that. And so you can see there's a few different loops. The loop itself has a few different stations. And the tendency is to just keep on moving inside the same repetitive loop that you have already created for yourself, which turns into a kind of memory, but an unconscious memory. Not that you would do that on purpose by any means. It is a way to keep suffering in place, to have the to have the suffering go into perpetuity and never get off the loop in the station. The beauty is, ultimately you can pan out, you can see the whole dynamic of your own loops and stations, and you can release the whole thing at one time. If you can see it all at one time, and you can see the programs that you use to hold the loops and stations in place, you can let go of so much at one time, and that whole dynamic can just turn into what seems like funny. Like, did I really do that? Did I think like that? And that can get more subtle. Also, you can release layers of it, and it just gets smaller and less consequential, and it's not a showstopper, and you just notice it, but it's not actually keeping you stuck in any way. And holidays are notorious for bringing up certain kinds of memories. Exactly, you got it. They're just that is part of the hard part. I have to admit that when holidays start to come up these days, it does bring up tension and cause for more inner work for me, because holidays used to be a time for family, and now I have a lot of free time. I might be helping a friend to create a little bit of a business in Christmas this year. That's how free I am. I don't have any plans of any kind. With any luck, I can get my son and his girlfriend to come over for a supper or something like that. But they are living their own life and having their own experience, and busy and stuff like that. So yeah, holidays really bring up stuff for people. And when you think about, for those that are connected with family and going to family gatherings, and you're going to meet so and so, and they're going to say something to you, or they're not going to want to listen to you, and it's going to trigger your childhood memories that you don't matter, or it's going to make you, maybe you're higher up the scale and you think, oh yeah, you're still as stupid as ever. Why don't you listen to anything I have to say? And it's fodder for a great deal of issues. I always thought I should just do support groups for holidays with people, but they're busy. That's what they're not going to be doing that at that time. So yeah, let me see what else I got here. I was reflecting a little bit on the word forgot, and on the surface, that word is kind of confusing, because for implies before, where it's like the foreground, meaning the front, and then got. So it's like this future gottenness, which is forgotten, but that it just seems like a badly named word. But when I looked into the actual etymology of it, it was kind of interesting. It is Middle English from Forietin, from Old English, for Geaton, if I'm saying that right at all, for Eaton, who knows if they pronounce that G or not, to lose power of recalling to the mind, to fail to remember, neglect inadvertently. That's all our normal meaning for the word forgotten. Used probably with privative force. Now specifically referring to the word for, the prefix for. So this made a lot more sense that its inherent meaning to be away or amiss. So not like the before meaning or the forefront meaning, but away, amiss, or opposite. So it is, and then got or getten is to get or to grasp. And then so it's the missed grasp. That's what that word actually means. So having looked up the etymology, it makes a lot more sense now. And it literally means to unget, hence to lose from the mind. And I don't know about you guys, but I tend to run my life a little bit more alchemist than I do. What's another example? Could be warrior or king. The alchemist will rely more on the access of memories. So there is the potential that we don't have to think our way through life, and we don't have to methodically, put everything on a list. Although I still do lists pretty good these days, because at some point the memory is going to fail. You get the volume of things in the memory, and you might not access the right thing at the right time. Or if you've noticed, you will remember it at the wrong time when you can't do anything about it, when your hands are tied or it's not accessible. And you always remember it when you can't do anything about it, and you always forget about it when you can do something about it. So that's when it'll hit the list, like, okay, yeah, this is coming. But to the degree that my memory will serve me whatever I need in that moment, I know that potential to be very real and true. I have amazed myself sometimes where there's clients maybe I haven't had a conversation with for a long time. It's been a big period in between working together, and I do take notes. But there have been, I'm like amazed the degree to which I can hold certain memories, and then I can also completely forget. So if you ever get worried that somehow I'm going to divulge your secrets, I'm never going to do that, like ever, just because that's a vow that I take to myself. And as a coach, I'm just never, ever going to speak. And what would be the point? Who would be interested in that? That's just like pure, I don't know. That's not authentic to speak about someone else's inner life and experiences and stuff like that, unless it's a teaching moment for a specific purpose. And of course, never revealing anybody's name, but sometimes I will remember the finest details, and you're just like, where was that hanging out? And it might have never been revealed to me had I not been in this next conversation with them, because there's no reason for that memory to come up, or maybe the memories come for no reason or something like that. So yeah, that was kind of interesting, what's remembered and what's forgotten. And yeah, so that if we are here to awaken into greater awareness and the freedom that can be made possible because of that, I'm putting out here that awareness itself isn't the goal, but it's the freedom that can be garnered from the awareness, because the awareness brings us to all kinds of um, knowing of ourself. Know thyself and be aware of yourself. Don't be just blindsided every time you have a thought or you do something and you're like, oh, who did that? Or who am I? I didn't say that. Even going into denial about it to yourself or to others. But this, awakening to greater awareness, wanting to know yourself, is really the place that freedom can be made possible from. And to me, that is the great goal. So it's not a straight line. It's not just like put one foot in front of the other. It'd be nice if it was like that, but it's not. It's windy and it's up and down, and you get to work with your memories as they come to you. And we're forever creating new memories. Sometimes our memories go on the record. Right now, this is going on the record and going to be available to someone else so that they could come along. It's like kind of an artifactual memory that maybe in the future can be found and maybe can't be. We don't know if all of this is going to be destroyed. I always save my recordings, but that's no guarantee at all. And so I guess one of the ultimate things I wanted to leave you guys with was that the not being a straight line evolution, not being able to just go from A to B and gain freedom can feel defeating and can leave us feeling like, oh, well, I did all that work, but here I am feeling bad again, or here I am having another strange holiday moment with the same person, or, oh, that person isn't even here and I'm still mad at them. And, that can make you feel like, oh, have I done any work at all? Have I come anywhere? But knowing that it's not a straight line evolution to freedom, allowing things to just continue to come up over and over again, allowing the memory to serve your ability to know yourself, to do the detective work and go deeper inside to find the roots in the unconscious, to dare to discharge painful memories that came from losses and traumas or growing, then this to me is very worthwhile. And I just want to encourage everyone to keep going, which is my maxim. So I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to share today. And it's a kind of fun subject that I like musing about. Some things you can't conclude on. I can only open the inquiry and ask the questions and create some discussion around it. So thank you everyone for joining. I totally appreciate it. Your contribution is invaluable to me because it's more fun and it's more interactive, and it gives me, I'm not just here talking at you guys, I'm talking with you, which I prefer by far. So let's see, coming up on the King Heroes Journey podcast on Monday, I'm going to be having Christine Massey, who was the warrior behind the Freedom of Information Acts that let us know there's no boogeyman virus. So that's like huge. And I've known of her for a really long time already, but finally got brave and asked her for an interview. She said yes right away. So I'm looking forward to that. And so we'll be back 1 p.m. Central Time on Monday, the 17th. And I'm going to be just hanging out with a friend or two for my birthday on the weekend. And I think that's all. So much love to you guys. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And I'm going to set up my outro video, see how this goes. That seems good. All right, everybody. Lots of love for now.